Namaste, everyone. Welcome. This is a brief lesson on the basics of yoga breathing and how to stop your heart, which is a bit of an intense title. However, there's a lot of truth to it, and I'm going to give you a lot of tangible techniques in this brief 20-minute class that you can take and, at any level in your practice, amplify your ability to focus, your ability to be fully invested in what it is that you're doing. In the yoga practice on your mat, but also just in life. The yoga practice is meant to be a training for that. And because we're not monks, I'm not showing you monk practices because I'm not a monk. I'm a householder, meaning I have a job, I have sexual relationships, and this separates monkhood from householder. So we're doing a yoga practice as a means to keep us in tune with our dharma, our spiritual purpose, but also to let that carry over into our life, just permeate all aspects of our life. So before we get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about what it is that we're doing, and this will also give people an opportunity to join because this is live streamed. So the problem, you could say, of yoga, the issue that yoga is a tool to solve is this wandering mind, this chaotic monkey mind that has all of these systems of thinking, conscious and unconscious, that are pulling us into habitual cause and effect that we may not be aware of. And so we're essentially creating the circumstances of our life due to patterns that we're either unconscious of or that they're in our unconscious mind, so that's another way of being unconscious. They could be conscious patterns, we're just unaware of the pattern and the pattern of cause and effect. So yoga is a tool to come in and set things straight. There's an underlying principle called samyoga, which is this coming together of spirit and inanimate material. So like the body, the physicality of it. But then there's a spirit element that is animating and creating the impetus, the impulse to evolve, to grow, to thrive and succeed. And it's something different than just rocks and water, and which has energy too. And there is a spirit element of that. But so without getting super deep into it, because this is yoga basics, there's this confusion of spirit with matter. And this is called samyoga. And largely this is due to a turbulent mind that is going so fast in so many different directions simultaneously with undercurrents and layers to it that we, as spiritual beings inhabiting this body, or as I like to think of it, this body inhabiting my spiritual awareness, we begin to identify with the thoughts. There's so many that we begin to identify with them. Let's say, for example, I'm really, really calm and I go for a drive, let's say into downtown LA, and there's a lot of traffic. At some point, the traffic might begin to percolate into my mind and agitate me. The traffic might be agitating because there's so many, people are weaving in and out, and there's close proximity, and there's not that sense of spaciousness. And so even though I came from a place, let's say I just did my yoga practice and I was feeling really good and really spacious, that in the midst of incessant chaos, it can destabilize me. And so even though you may be very well aware of your spiritual nature and the spiritual element of your being, the monkey mind has a way of drawing our identification towards it. So as we slow the mind, as we slow thought, or rather like the frequency of thought, we create more pause between thought. We begin to discern thought from spirit, thought as a material thing, and then the observation of it as something immaterial. And pranayama is the method to do this, because there are essentially two main sources for the churnings of your mind. And one is desire, wish, like what you're wishing to happen, what your instinct almost. It's a very it's a deep kind of programming in your physiology and in just instinct, I think, is the best word that comes to mind. And then, but also prana. Prana is this life force, and prana is most easily transmitted via the breath. And there are other means also, and ultimately your mind is in control of prana, so you can absorb prana with not necessarily using the breath. But we're going to use the breath, and this is called pranayama. So I teach the Ashtanga system, not Ashtanga Vinyasa per se, which is, you don't need to get bogged down with lineages, but the Ashtanga method is the Yoga Sutras, and Ashtanga is 8 limb. Pranayama is the 4th limb of those 8 limbs. You have some ethics of the first 2 limbs, your posture, which I'm holding a posture right now as I sit. It's not possible to not have a posture. You always have a posture, so the mindfulness that you bring to your posture and how you make it useful for what you're doing. And so many more elements of that. I don't want to get super deep into it. This is a cursory thing. I'm going to give you the theory and the science behind what it is that I'm going to have you do with your breath. And then it's meant for you to practice, meant for you to take it and go and use it in your yoga practice, use it in life, because it's very simple, very basic. I used to do this as a PhD a lot, and my awareness of what I'm about to teach you has gone up to the degree where I want to share it now. I see it. I see what I've been doing, and it's time to share. So then, so after pranayama, we experience a detachment of our senses, almost like our senses are something separate from us, and they seem to be reaching for things. Our sight is looking for things. Our smell is looking for something. And that sense of separation would be the 5th limb of the yoga system. Then when we get a little bit of control or handle on that, it's like all my senses are out, my senses are in, because you can like sense within and all of this stuff. Then you begin to develop the urge to concentrate. Concentration is the 6th limb. And this is something very, very useful in most walks of life. However, your ability to concentrate is very strictly limited by all of the tangent thoughts that are simultaneously occurring. And a lot of those thoughts are in the unconscious mind. So we need to tap into that to really be able to fully blossom. And again, the yoga is to stop thought. This yoga is to stop thought, because when you stop thought, the very next thought, you're all there. There's nothing else that's distracting. You're all present. And that's what all self-help, that's what modern New Age stuff is pointing to. But the point of yoga is not the realizing of your full potential. I mean, that's part of it, but that's the byproduct. The yoga is the stopping of thought and the identifying with that which was able to observe thought. When you do this, the next thought to come up, you're fully on it. That's where all your focus goes, and then magic happens. When you give all your awareness to a thought, it becomes so powerful. And that's magic, or whatever you want to call it. And so that would be meditation. When you're able to seamlessly, effortlessly contemplate that single thought. A thought is a form. So this effortless contemplation of a single form would be meditation. And then the dissolution of there's no more form, there's no more you, object and subject merge, it just is, you become absorbed, is the 8th limb. And a lot of that happens with the surrender and also just familiarity. And that's not the end, because you come back. It's not like you die then, you then come back to normal daily living and go back in traffic, the traffic stirs you up again, and then so you learn to develop this ability to tap into your spiritual awareness, your calmness, and in the midst of chaos, but also to just create a more even baseline that, like what I'm about to share with you, I had to practice hundreds and hundreds of hours intensely of posture, just stretching and breathing, before I even developed an interest in this. And yet, there are some people, and I wasn't one of these kinds of people, that right from the beginning, they're interested in the breathing, the science of the breathing, the effects, the mysticism around the breathing, the pranayama, and a certain kind of mind is qualified for this. But because I want everyone to be aware of what's available, and also to have something that you can tangibly like just take with you and practice. So I'm not going to give you really intense pranayama practice right now. We're about half done, so we're going to get into it. That would be Ashtanga Primary Series Pranayama. You go to ninthlimb.com, and that's it's primary series, but it's not easy. And so this is going to really bolster a lot of it for those people on my channel that purchased that. This will help. Okay, so what we need to know about breathing. The inhale is a diaphragm. The diaphragm is, let me see, I have a picture here. Try to keep all my pictures straight. So the diaphragm is this dome. It's this dome-like muscle under the rib cage. Okay, and I'll create a link to the book I just showed you. But so the diaphragm, it uses this thing, this little lip here at the bottom of the sternum called the xiphoid process. That's used for leverage. The diaphragm is this dome that goes up and in the rib cage, and it connects to the upper lumbar spine, and it goes up and forward and then connects to the back of this xiphoid process. Okay, so it's like an umbrella that goes up and in the rib cage, the xiphoid process and the upper lumbar. So when we talk about pushing the belly out with the inhale, that's the diaphragm, which is this dome, flattening. As you inhale, the diaphragm contracts, which means it flattens. When it flattens, it pushes the belly out because it's pushing down. The belly has nowhere to go. The unique distinction between the rib cage and the belly, as far as they're both the midsection, is the rib cage changes volume but not shape. And the soft torso changes shape but not volume. A little bit because of food and water, but compared to breathing, it's relatively fixed volume, but it can change shape. The rib cage holds its shape, but it changes volume. Diaphragm separates rib cage from the belly. And so as the belly pushes down, or the diaphragm pushes down, the belly goes out. Now it's super interesting, and this gets into the stopping the heart. The heart pulse is an autonomic, it's controlled by the autonomic nervous system. It's unconscious. But there are so many things that are unconscious that you couldn't start to get control of. For example, blinking. You can not blink. I've not blinked for 10 minutes and more. And breathing. Breathing is a natural, but you can, it's very easy. Breathing might be the easiest, that you can elongate it, hold it. At some point you have to breathe, but you can control it. Or it can also be natural. There are probably people that their entire life, no one ever said, focus on your breathing now. Notice your breathing. Become aware of how you're breathing right now. And so they just never lended their awareness to their breathing. So breathing is a gateway into that autonomic nervous system. I get a battery warning. But we'll be able to finish here. So is blinking. So is other things like itching or reflexes. And the heart rate is in there. It's a little deeper, but the heart rate is in there as something that you can start to tap into, because you'll notice as you do pranayama, if you do it especially as I'm about to share with you, that you'll slow your heart rate. Well, it makes sense. If you're running, you're panting, and your heart rate spikes. And if you stop and calm down, lay down, then your heart rate slows. But if you can control your breathing, you can control your heart rate. And so in many ways, in some of the yogis would say that breath and mind are the same. That there's the seer, and breath and mind move simultaneously. That's why I said there's these urges that churn mind, but also prana churns mind. And when you stop one, they both stop, because mind and prana are one. And your pranamaya kosha and your manamaya kosha, your mind and your prana are churning simultaneously. Okay, but because you can manipulate your heart rate with your breathing, that means your heart rate is mind. And it's obvious, it's unconscious mind, but you can tap into that mind and then stop it. And when you stop mind, and that doesn't mean you need to stop your heart to be able to experience yoga, but there needs to be a steadiness to it, an om, a quality to it. And there's also an element of fascination and awe at what is unknown. it's important throughout your life to continually engage in activities that are not super familiar to you. That's not all your activities, but a little something of each day should be something you're not totally comfortable with, you're not totally familiar with, so that you don't become complacent. And for me, like, I was really comfortable with the guitar, so I picked up a didgeridoo, that horn you breathe in. And I'm not that good at it, but it's humbling, but it's also, it creates that awe. And so my yoga practice, I use that in my yoga practice, even though I'm very familiar with my body, there's more. And when we tap into something like the diaphragm, which, as I'm about to explain, this is something, there's aspects of your body that there's awe to be found. When you can slow your heart rate to near a snail's crawl, and you're observing it, you're like, fuck, man, my heart is moving so slow right now. And you almost start to panic, because the longer you hold your breath, the slower the heart gets, and the slower the heart gets, the longer you're holding your breath, because you're counting on the rhythm of your pulse. And it's like, fuck, when am I gonna get to 40? I need to exhale. And it's like, wow, so there's more. And then the level of stillness that comes after that, for example, in a breath hold, is precious. It's a precious moment. All moments are precious, and that moment helps you realize the preciousness of all moments. Like I said, the yoga practice trickles into the rest of your life. So what's important about the diaphragm breath, moving, it contracts down and pushes the belly out, is that there's a nerve that goes between the diaphragm and the bottom of the lungs. Between the lungs are up in the rib cage and the diaphragm's at the bottom. Between the diaphragm and the lungs is the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve helps to innervate the heart. So when we push the belly out, as opposed to keeping the belly firm as I breathe, which would be all in the chest, the air is ultimately only going into the lungs. But we can hold the volume of the rib cage more or less constant when we breathe, at least for a range of our breath, by taking advantage of the space the diaphragm can create in the bottom of the lungs. The base of the lungs are also innervated by the vagus. And so when we learn how to stimulate the vagus nerve, then we tap into our heart rate. Okay? And the sensation of a nerve, so if you flex, I do this a lot, if you make fists, flex your wrist down, internally rotate, take the arms down or maybe even a little to the side, you'll start to feel the sensation of a nerve down the front of your forearm. Okay, that's what a nerve tensioning feels like. So you want to feel something not super intense, but of course I've never done it. I don't think I could do it super intense. It's kind of limited because of the structure of your body there. But the further you can push your belly out, I'm doing it right now, I can feel my vagus nerve right between the bottom of the rib cage and my lungs. Right in this region, I feel it's almost like a woozy, similar to when I'm doing this, but it's just located here. So the inhale, diaphragm down, belly out. Push the belly out, feel the nerve sensation at the base of the rib cage, and there's your access. That's your access gate into your heart rate. Okay? And so we'll go ahead and do, this will go 5 minutes over. We'll go ahead and do, and if you have any questions at any point, you type them, I'll answer them at the end. We'll do a few breaths, and then I'm going to talk about the last key point, tapping into the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands and the heart rate, as you might be able to guess, are very intimately connected. You take a shot of adrenaline and watch your heart rate spike, and vice versa. So, but first we really want to get a little practice of, get some reps in with diaphragm breaths. So the key is, I really want you to focus on push belly out more, feel the vagus nerve at the base of the lungs. And that's the whole point. If you want to do breath retention, that's fine. Otherwise, just focus on the deepest inhale possible with the belly. Don't worry, you can get a little bit more if you expand the chest. Don't worry about that. I want to see how strong can you make the sensation of the vagus nerve at the diaphragm. So go ahead and create the breath of sound by almost snoring a little bit. Continue to take very deep breaths all the way to the top of the inhale, all the way to the bottom of the exhale. And now with each inhale, really bring that element of belly out more forward with the navel and feel what happens between right at the bottom of the rib cage. And be easy with it. Unless you're doing retentions, just transition right back into the exhale all the way to the bottom. It's tempting not to empty. Fully empty. Keep your face eased. Forehead, temple, cheeks, jaw, teeth, tongue. And as you inhale, fully push the belly out and feel that stretching sensation at the base of the rib cage. Good. Take rest. So, I'm going to say one extra thing. There are, how do I show this? There are muscles at the base of the back of the head, like between C1 and the atlas. Very little, very small muscles. But also in the front, I can't lift the head very much, but also in the front. So the very same as there are very little muscles between the atlas and, which is the C1 is called the atlas because it holds, it's like the god or whatever his name was, Atlas, that held the globe. So the atlas, the first cervical vertebra, holds the cranium. And there's little muscles between, there's many, between the first vertebra and the head. But also, so this is the key, in the front, which I can't really point to, but in the front of the vertebra, which is right under the throat, there's little muscles that attach to the head and the first cervical vertebra. So these are the muscles that create head extension and head flexion. Different from neck extension and neck flexion. Okay, so it's only at that first, so it's not a lot of range of motion, but head flexion right at the top, the very top of the neck vertebra. Head flexion is very key to creating decompression in the spine, especially on inhale retentions. Okay, so that's a little aside. Last key point, this is it, tapping into the adrenals. So we want to create a intellectual, but not necessarily that we need to think about. We want to create a connection of mind, a mind connection between our heart rate and our adrenal glands. It's already there, so we just want to become aware of the highway. It's like you're driving and you see this road, you keep passing the road every time you drive, but you don't know where it goes, and you never take the road. I'm telling you, take the road, because the road is a shortcut. And I know where it goes. So the key is the adrenals are right on top of the kidneys, and the kidneys are right behind the floating ribs. So the bottom 2 or 3 ribs on either side, the kidneys, and then right above that's the adrenals. So the kidneys, adrenals, they're like together. And well, that's right by where the diaphragm is. And so the vagus nerve also sends the little branches that go into the adrenals. And as you make this connection of diaphragm to vagus nerve, and then diaphragm to vagus nerve to heart, the next step will be diaphragm to vagus nerve to heart to adrenal glands. And in no particular order, but something that I found very, very helpful for finding the adrenals is the lat muscles, latissimus dorsi. This big muscle, well, it's not so big on me, but it's relatively big. So, when people like pop out their wings, this big muscle along the side, latissimus dorsi. Okay? So this muscle right here on the back of the arm, the whole side body. Now, latissimus dorsi attaches to the arm bone, attaches to the shoulder blade, it goes down to the pelvis, attaches, but it also attaches on right behind the adrenal glands on those bottom 3 or 4 ribs. So if you can tap into the sensation of the lats, which is, I think, in my experience of teaching, relatively easy for people, it's right there. Find your floating ribs, and from the back, which is where they mostly are because they don't go all the way around. And think about as you stretch the vagus nerve with your diaphragmatic inhales, sending your awareness there. And obviously the breath isn't going there. The breath only goes into the lungs. And but it's not too difficult to grasp if I say to you something like, focus on your right foot. Think about your right foot right now. Just focus on your right foot. Become aware of the quality of your right foot right now. Is it tense? Is it easy? Is it heavy? Is it light? Is it stinky? Is it clean? Is it sweaty? Is it dry? Whatever. Is it manicure or pedicure? Whatever. Just focus on your right foot now. Good. Good. All right, let go of that. So you can bring your focus to a part of your body, and all of a sudden, new information starts coming to you of awarenesses and details of that body part, because all of your awareness wasn't pointed there, because there's lots of thoughts going on at the same time. So as we tune our mind to the breath, which are really just two sides of the same coin, so that's when the mind becomes superiorly or supremely aware of the breath, of itself, essentially, then the side of the coin reveals itself, which is the higher, the observation of it. Mind and breath, bring them together. The edge is the observation of it. So as we do this breathing exercise, which we're going to close it out now, this is the last bit. You inhale, push the belly way, way out, way, way out. Feel that vagus nerve. And then with each repetition, because you're starting to clarify that sensation, the next inhale, do that same thing, but also become aware of the floating ribs. You can even touch there if you want as you inhale. So go ahead and begin the breath of sound. And a natural, normal thing to occur right now would be the breath will begin to slow more and more and more with each repetition. It's like taming a wild animal. You can't rush it. You be patient. But the focus is send your awareness to the posterior floating ribs and push the belly out more with each inhale and feel the vagus nerve. Don't worry about the chest. It's not the biggest breath you can take. It's just the biggest belly breath you can take. Go ahead and do 3 more repetitions. Let the exhale be a reflex. The inhale be fully send your awareness to the floating ribs. Relax. That feels so good. If you're not feeling super good, practice, because that feels it's so calming. I just want you to experience it. It's so blissful, and yet it's not the end. It's just a clue. It's a arrow pointing in the direction that hey, you can tap into your heart rate. Did you know that? By breathing a certain way. If you practice this, stretch the vagus nerve, push the belly out more with each inhale, send your awareness into your kidney area, and then just watch. What will start to happen, the first step will be you'll start to hear your heart rate, and you'll become so calm that you'll actually feel and hear your own heart rate. Kind of like if you just did a heavy exercise and your heart's pulsing really heavy and you can feel it. Well, imagine your heart's not pulsing really heavy. It's just soft and gentle, but you can still hear it and feel it. That'll be the first step. Then you'll start to notice it changes with practice. And it might not always go calm. That's when you realize that you're putting too much effort in your pranayama, because your heart rate will jump. And it's like, well, I'm trying too hard to hold my breath too long. And then you'll start to develop these actual conscious connections where you don't have to sit and do a pranayama practice to calm your heart. You continue to do your practice, but in certain situations, you can just take 1 or 2 deep breaths into your kidney area and just drop about 10-15% of your intensity. And that's a big deal. At least in my life it has been. So if you have any questions, I'd like to answer them. Otherwise, this is the end, and I'll close out with a final Om if there was anything to answer. Nope. Oh. It says waiting for 9th limb. Well, I hope you're not waiting anymore. Okay, so I'll take this opportunity to mention that on Mondays I teach recorded lectures that go way deeper into techniques. You could imagine if we had 30 more minutes that we could start doing retentions and then add some ancient wisdom and philosophy to what the effects we're creating on our body. Really creates everything that we've been talking about. The awe, the inspiration, the motivation, and there's a lot of really juicy good things that come out of this kind of practice. Creativity, ease, poise, so on. I need to go. The battery's not going to last too much longer. And also, Sanyama 1 comes out. The Heart Seal comes out October 1st. It's a shoulder therapy product that, like, for example, I teach you how to very precisely and accurately isolate latissimus dorsi, plus 7 other muscles, and we group them all together so that you create balance in the shoulder girdle around to the heart. So it's no joke. that it's called the heart seal because, kind of like we do with the diaphragm, we tap into our parasympathetic nervous system when we isolate muscles, and hence the name Sanyama, which is cognitive practice of concentration, meditation, absorption. So that comes out October 1st, and so definitely mark your calendar, check that out. And I'll close with a little Om. Feel free to join me if you'd like. I'm going to take a breath first. Namaste. Interesting to note, I did the diaphragm breath when I inhaled for my Om. Helps me carry my Om longer. So, ninth limb. I'll see you next time. Tomorrow is Sunday, so yeah, I'll go ahead and give a little lesson tomorrow, but stay tuned about that. If you're not a fan of Yogi Chris PhD on Facebook, go ahead and like that page, and I do a lot of stuff with that page too, and that's where I give announcements when I'm going to do live streams. So, namaste. See you next time.